All Splatoon games look the same is a fairly common sentiment that I've seen online, and don't get me wrong, I know exactly why someone would say this. They're stupid, or their lives just don't revolve around games made for children. One of those two. Okay, obviously there are many similarities between the games, that's how sequels work after all, but over the course of just 3 entries in the series, we've seen an evolution of ideas and artistic expression from what is essentially an experiment to something far more refined. Each game is its own vital piece of the puzzle that turns Splatoon's UI into the thing of beauty we see today, with some clear trends throughout each entry that I'll let you see if you can figure out on your own before I get into it too much. For more contents like this, go to the Splatoon 3 analysis playlist, and to support this channel, become a channel member. Welcome to 2015, you're that one weird kid who owns a Wii U. But if you had been keeping up religiously with the latest Nintendo announcements, and let's be real, you were, you'd know Nintendo were about to release some kind of weird squid-based, motion-controlled ink shooting game using their infamously bad online multiplayer. My point is that this was a weird time for Nintendo. While it's easy to forget these days with the Switch's success, back then you really were in the minority if your primary console was a Wii U.
Yoshi! It's a double Yoshi explosion!
Nintendo knew it was a lost cause, and even the far more successful 3DS was on its last legs, so they moved all their resources to the upcoming Nintendo NX and essentially left us behind for a while. And yet, during this period, they released an extremely creative and experimental game with an absurd amount of time put into the design, the lore, unique gameplay and music, and quality control. This game was a huge risk that paid off thanks to the developers' hard work, creativity, and understanding of fun game design. It's the foundation for everything that came after, and it's kind of really awkward and rough. Let's start with something a little nitpicky to give a simple but clear example of what I mean. This is what the introduction to a game of Turf War looks like, right? We've got this huge black splat graphic in the middle, contrasting the large white text, so everything's easy to read. Every graphic down to the black borders behind the text has some kind of creative texture. It all feels messy and fun as Splatoon should, but still remains modern, cohesive, and easy to understand. Well, that certainly is how Splatoon 3 looks, but let's rewind to the Wii U days and... oh, I guess someone at Nintendo sent their toddler in to do their job that day, and the toddler didn't have any hands or a brain. Now, despite being a weeaboo fucking piece of shit, overcritical idiot who makes fun of brainless children, I technically am a professional graphic designer, and if there's one key fundamental to all of graphic design, it's organizing information based on priority. This is why the title of a thing is always bigger and stands out more than some random disclaimer at the bottom. It's all about what you want people to see first, breaking down the information you're communicating so it's easy to digest. This screen just doesn't do that. All the text is the same color and almost the same size, so at a glance you struggle to figure out what to read first. Ink the most turf to win is actually slightly bigger, which I don't fully understand the reasoning behind. Generally, you'd make the short, easy to understand sentences the focal point and keep longer explanations smaller. There's a faint shadow effect, but this will still get hard to read when it's up against something white in the background. The name of the map is nice to have, but it's ultimately redundant when almost the entire screen is dedicated to showing the map we're about to play on. There's just no need for this text to be given as much priority as everything else. Despite my praise of Splatoon 3, it was actually Splatoon 2 that took Splatoon's rough formula to the next level. It has all the same elements, but organized information based on priority using size and contrast, and pushed far less relevant information out of the way. Splatoon 2's UI absolutely had some missteps, and trust me, we will get to those, but in many cases it introduced the most important changes that Splatoon 3 would later refine. And really, that's the consistent theme between these 3 games. Splatoon created the entire aesthetic of the series, but in hindsight it has a lot of awkward and arbitrary design decisions. These elements had time to be better thought out in Splatoon 2, which gave the game a much stronger sense of identity, and then Splatoon 3 had even more time to iron out any kinks and consider how every single element would contribute to the Splatoon experience. Now, to keep this video balanced, we're going to switch gear from why Splatoon 2's contributions were so important to why its UI is actually trash. If Splatoon 2's UI was a person, it would be the fucking Tasmanian devil. Like, can you stay still for a single frame so I can figure out what I'm looking at? Not only does every single button have an animated background behind it, but there are 2 separate backgrounds for different rows. The L and R buttons keep flashing as if we need a reminder that they exist, and even the non-animated UI elements have this noisy line background. Noise is really the perfect word to describe this, or visual noise to be specific. So many things are happening at all times for seemingly no reason, and none of this helps the user understand or navigate the menu. We have to give Splatoon 1's map a little bit of leeway because its purpose is different, being on the gamepad touchscreen in this case. place. The icons are bigger and laid out differently for this purpose, like putting the equip button in the bottom left corner so you can quickly access hits with your thumb. Splatoon 2 reworked this for a gamepad-less console, but also improved the aesthetic. These arbitrary rounded shapes are just kind of, well, arbitrary, and don't contribute anything to the visual design. I think Splatoon 2 was right to do away with this stuff, but it debatably went too far and everything became too uniform. Almost everything is a rounded rectangle, which doesn't really communicate the messy fun Splatoon is known for. There's this little ink dribble on the selected element, but even that is mostly uniform and lacking in any kind of texture. Everything is just a bit too clean and shiny, and while at the time it was perfectly functional, in hindsight it just wasn't immersive or consistent to the Splatoon experience, as cringe as that may sound. I also thought the design of the map here was never particularly useful, showing you the square from basically the same perspective the player has in-game. Splatoon 3 took the improvements made by Splatoon 2 and refined them, creating a more unified and polished experience. Instead of arbitrary or clean, consistent shapes, UI elements are directly tied into the theme of Splatoon itself. They use the colourful, creative aspects of the game and take the UI in an arts and crafts direction. Each element is a unique shape that's been crudely cut out. They've thought through this design language to the point that secondary elements like the border used to organize the modes from the shops also fits into the theme. For the map itself, the border for this element is a piece of paper that's been torn and stapled down, and to add extra interest, it also leaves the border of the main object that it's a part of. The map itself is made from various photos stuck down with tape that also serve as the arrows communicating which sections connect. By the way, this entire menu is also bigger than it was in Splatoon 2, on account of the equip button being shrunk down significantly, another leftover relic from Splatoon 1, and these pointless LNR speech bubbles being removed. You'll also notice more texture in every element of these menus, including the small icons at the top. As a side note, they also updated the status icon to include octolinks this time. Going back to the visual noise of Splatoon 2, Splatoon 3's menus are a lot less distracting. Almost everything is specifically designed, but it's still. The only consistently playing animation is the squid cursor and the map pin, which therefore grab your attention and bring your eye to the option you're selecting. This contrast is well used to lead the eye, rather than just having random stuff all over the place. Splatoon 3's map menu is probably the least touchscreen friendly, and of course even without the gamepad the Switch does still have a touchscreen, but I imagine most people are using buttons to navigate regardless. Though as a side note, I am terrified of anyone brave enough to play Splatoon in handheld mode. You freak. Okay, enough with the menus though, let's hop into a match and murder some squid children. Isn't that like the third time I've mentioned killing children in this video? The HUD, while actually in-game, is probably the most important aspect of Splatoon's UI. It needs to communicate vital information in the smallest amount of time possible, while still being appealing to look at after hundreds of hours of gameplay. Going back to Splatoon 1, you'll realize just how rough this actually started out. In the jump from 1 to 2, the timer was moved, removing this redundant versus graphic. The squid icons at the top were updated to tell you what weapons were in use, a graphic was added to show which sub-weapon you have, and your score was overall made less bulky. Though they also removed the icons to indicate which sub-abilities you have equipped, which is debatable whether that's a good change or not. But another good change was the updated D-pad communications. Come on was changed to the more useful this way, and in the EU English translation, nice was changed to booyah, in line with the American version. Come on and nice are actually far more accurate translations of the Japanese version of Splatoon, but the updated text just works better locally in my opinion. From Splatoon 1 to 2, the special icon was changed from a 3D model to a 2D graphic, but the weapons were still 2D, so it was a little inconsistent. In Splatoon 3 this was updated, so all of them are consistent 2D graphics. Now, I have actually spoken about this in a previous video which I'll let you watch after instead of repeating myself, but Splatoon 3 also makes huge improvements by indicating where other players have been slattered with this graphic, and has a slightly eye-catching but not distracting X animation at the top when someone dies. All of this simply communicates more information to the player, allowing anyone to be more aware and play better without putting in any extra effort. There's so much to talk about that I could go on for hours, but the good news is that me and Deku Gamer have already done that. Go to the Splatoon 3 analysis playlist for more in-depth analysis on Splatoon 3's UI, analysis on why Deep Cut's branding is the best, or any other element of this game with enough juice for us to suck on. Why did I write that? Also, if you want to improve your art for free, you can join the Learning to Draw Discord server, and you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and you can become a channel member. And that's going to be it. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.